Today, sermon summary for Acts chapter 4, verse 32 to 5, verse 11. And in this section of the book of Acts, we have the early church being the church. We get a picture of some of the amazing things that are taking place. We find out that the believers are one in heart and mind. They're united. They are sharing their possessions. And we're told that God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there was no needy persons among them. And so there's some great things happening for the church. And yet, our experience is that when good things are happening, also challenges come up. There's attacks, there's opposition, there's even something that we've all experienced, disunity, when we're not all getting along and living happily ever after. And that's going to be the case that we see here. The question that comes out of this passage is, so how does God do that? How does God preserve the unity of his church and keep us on his mission together? And so we're told that certain believers would sell some of their possessions and property and give them to the apostles, and it would be shared with everyone that had need. And there's a positive example of that given, an example that we're to follow or to emulate. It's a man named Joseph, who was also called Barnabas. Barnabas was son of encouragement, and he did this encouraging thing. He sold a field that he owned, he brought the money, and he put it at the apostles' feet. But then there is another couple who see the example of Barnabas, and they want the recognition without the true sacrifice. That's this couple, Ananias and Sapphira, in Acts chapter 5. And so they sell a property. They keep some of it back, but they pretend to bring it all and put it at the apostles' feet. So they're trying to look more spiritual than they actually are. And Peter says, with insight from God, how is it, Ananias, that Satan has so filled your heart that you've lied to the Holy Spirit and kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Didn't it belong to you after it was sold? And before it was sold, and after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God. And instantly, the judgment of God comes on Ananias, and he falls down and dies, and they carry him out and bury him. And then 3 hours later, Sapphira comes in, and Peter asks her a similar question. Is this the price that you and Ananias got for the land? Yes, she said, that is the price. She was in on the conspiracy. Peter speaks to her as well. How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? She, in that moment, is judged and dies. And we're told that great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. Well, we certainly see the positive example of Barnabas. We want to avoid the negative example of Ananias and Sapphira. But we want to recognize that God is the one who ultimately is at work, preserving the unity of his church and providing for us as his people and keeping us on his mission. And so we said that there were three kind of commitments and affirmations that we could make to help protect the unity, to participate in God's protection of the unity of his church and our church. And just making these statements. I want to receive God's great grace. I want to participate in God's great power. And I want to live with a great and proper fear and awe and respect of a holy and righteous God. I want to live with a great and proper fear of God. And that's our summary of this section of the book of Acts. Thanks for joining us.